Hello, my name is Winton. Welcome to the Asian American International Film Festival, the 43rd edition. I am here today with a lovely panel of filmmakers for our Truth and Realness Queer Shorts block. A little moment of nostalgia. The Queer Shorts was actually one of the first blocks I've ever programmed for AIFE, and it's still something that I think is so awesome and lovely. I want to thank our community partners for being partners on this event. So Queer Asian Social Club, Q-Wave, Gap Mini, P-Flag, API Rainbow Parents, and the Light Leaks for supporting our queer for programming across our festival. I want to start off with some introduction. So if we could just have who you are, what film you are part of, and what you did on it. SNJV, if you want to start.
Hi, everybody. I'm SNJV, and I use all pronouns, and I'm coming to you from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm proudly presenting my short, SACH, and SACH means Truth in Hindi, taking you behind the scenes of my world as a multi-ethnic drag performer in the Bay Area. So I'm super grateful to be here.
Niki?
I can follow that. Come on now. Hi, I'm Niki Ong. I'm the co-writer and director of the short film Were You Gay in High School?
And Amber.
Hi, I'm Amber Bouillon. I'm the writer-director for Things We Carry.
Awesome. And we'll also have people in the chat taking questions. So if you have any questions for any of our filmmakers, please put it in chat, either in Twitch or Facebook, and we'll poll them. So just want to start with some general questions. Sanjeev, obviously the film is based on your life, but why in particular did you want to capture this and share this with the world this way?
For me, I think that performance has just been such a mainstay in my life. Indian culture often cultivates a lot of performance arts expressions, especially through Bollywood films and things like that. But you see at weddings and celebrations, if you've ever been to one, there's always like a dance performance. And it's usually by female identified folks, girls in the family, all of that. As a young kid, I was one of the only boys in my family getting up and dancing by myself. And it took a lot of bravery. It took a lot of overcoming what was already stirring within me. And so as I grew in the space of performance, I knew that it was, I share something because I bring in unapologetic ethnic flavor to my performances and pieces. I usually don't kind of filter for the audiences. I don't change the language or anything like that when it's not right. When I started performing more regularly in the drag scene, people would come up to me or send me messages or come to quietly after saying, thank you for performing that song. That's a song I grew up listening to with my grandmother. Or thank you for wearing that beautiful sari because my mom wears that and I wish I could wear that. So for me, such is the look at me stepping out of the closet, whatever proverbial closet there was, adorned in my mom and my sister's clothes and jewelry, and doing what I absolutely love the most, and that's performance. Performance is my connection to the divine. Whatever we decide to call that divine artist of the universe, something is there. And I have a clear conversation with that creator and everybody else just gets to watch. So such is really kind of this private conversation that goes on the screen. And for what came of that is just beyond me. And to see myself in that form is interesting. I don't really do it for like ego. I think I'm so cool. For me, it means that me being visible can allow somebody else to see their own light. So I'm just a speck of glitter that shines another light on somebody else's speck of glitter. So such is really kind of just a 13 glittery filled minute experience.
I mean, it is very glittery, and I would recommend people try to watch it as like on a big of a screen as possible so that you can kind of get as close to a live performance with Sanjeev as possible. Niki, can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to make Were You Gay in High School?
Yeah, absolutely. So this script was co-written by myself and my cinematographer, Karen Du. And we're both, queer out adult friends. And there's kind of a little bit of, irony in the title of like, Were You Gay in High School? Because like, yeah, I'm gay now. I was gay then. That's not really like a thing that really changed for me. But because I was closeted in high school, like the answer is also like, no, I wasn't gay in high school. Like if you ask people I went to high school with, they'd be like, no, because she was straight. But I wasn't. So, being like two out adults who were both like closeted in high school and, having that distance to be like, what were you like back then? And, you know, kind of just going back into all of those awkward, cringy, embarrassing, weird moments that happened to us as teens that were like either like super hyper sexually charged or not. Because, you know, when you're closeted in high school, when you have a crush, you can't tell anybody. You know, that's like stuff that you hold in yourself and then it gets lost somewhere inside of you. So being able to go back to that and talk about it in like a humorous and silly way, being able to laugh at, you know, the weird stuff that happened to us, that like really gay moments where you made out with that girl in the basement, but you were still like, no, I'm not, I'm straight. So there's like a lot to mine there, and we had a blast doing that, but that's where that came from.
Yeah. And Amber, what about you and your film? What inspired it?
So for my film, I was working on another film and had another idea, had another script. And I had a close friend and we went out to dinner, and I had been with my partner at the time for 6 years at that time. And I hadn't been able to tell my parents about it. I'm actually not gay, I'm not queer, but I had to hide my partner for other reasons. And I remember we had dinner and she was just like, if your father were to pass away tomorrow, would you regret not saying anything? And that just kind of really struck a chord, and I couldn't get it out of my head. And I think for me, film, whether I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, but it seems like I almost use it as like a form of therapy sometimes. It's like a way for me to like work through things in a way that is personal, but then also not. And so the film was actually my way of like telling my parents and like having a conversation that I wasn't brave enough to have in person. And so when I finally made the film and I showed it to my parents, you know, my mom kind of got it right away. My dad did not. It was like a little too subtle, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of where the film came from.
Cool. And staying on with you, Amber, I found it so interesting, the specificity of the setting, and in particular the fact that the grandmother is a diver, I guess. Can you talk a little bit more about like why you chose that kind of, I guess, profession but context for the grandmother, and for the family, and why you wanted to show the audience this kind of really particular part of Korean culture?
Yeah, so Haenyeo divers, that's like the name of these women who dive. They are incredible to watch. That was my favorite part of the whole filmmaking process. They're like 60 plus years old and they go in the ocean every morning. Like my whole crew, we're wearing like coats and they're in wetsuits and like diving into the ocean with no, no gear, and they just go underwater and they like harvest and they become matriarchs. So they send their kids off to, college, and they support the family. And I had seen them a while back when I was in Korea, like when I was younger. And I just remember even them being very struck by them, because to me, these women represent such like a very specific symbol of the Korean female strength that I think a lot of times is not acknowledged or not really, seen. And so to me, with this idea, it made sense that if I'm talking, like I really wanted to showcase this side of Korean female strength, I guess. And to me, that made sense with the theme of the film as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was just so interesting. And yeah, to see just like wise and just strong women just like come out of the water. I was like,
yeah, it
oh
was
my
incredible.
God, it's so cool. It's so cool.
And also, they've been around for, I forget the exact date, but it's been like hundreds of years. And I thought that there's something about that too, something that's been around forever. And then Korea still has, it's still, like gay marriage is still not legal. There's still a lot of work to do, but these like more kind of like this idea of pairing something very traditional with this like kind of contemporary issues that we're trying to like tackle together.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of pairing, Niki, I think something that is very, very striking about your film is how you use animation. Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to incorporate animation and kind of the process behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. We had initially written the script without animation in mind. The script kind of came from a very candid conversation from my co-writer and I. And when we kind of shared it around, it's funny because, all of the things that we'd talked about that show up in the film now that, in a script form was not animated, like stuff like, there's a bunch of different animated cats and like crazy feelings that you can't really convey. And so when our producers suggested, like these are very like emotionally repressed moments that you're talking about, like how can we visually elevate those, and animation just seemed like such an amazing way to do that, because with animation, like literally anything is possible. Like you can draw anything with our amazing animators, Sarah Gunnistortier and Amanda Bonato, that like you can't shoot on an indie film budget, but you can absolutely animate, right? And so it was something that we were like, cool, if we can really like lean in and set ourselves free for like what we want to show and what we want to convey. Because I think, you know, these feelings of being closeted, like the film's not about coming out. Like I think those are very specific feelings, that about being closeted and trying to navigate that by yourself is like a really difficult thing to convey if it's not something that you're super privy to. And so, you know, anyone can kind of understand some of the more unrealistic, you know, teen hormonal brain visions that we all kind of have. And so bringing those to life with animation was probably like the funnest part of making this film.
I mean, it is, yeah. The Garden State transition still like is so amazing to me.
One of my
Because
favorites.
I was like,
Great.
Garden State, like, I mean, a joke. But then when the transition happens, I was like, oh God, that was actually worth it. Sanjeev, one of the things that really stood out to me about your film and the content within it is, you know, I think within performing, people understand that there is this kind of community. But what I loved was the community and family that you revealed within your own family. And there's this portion where you talk about the strength and the gratitude that you have for your sisters and participating in your process. Could you talk a little bit more about how, I guess, like how that relationship had started and has grown to the point where they now are kind of this foundation for everything that you do on stage?
Without getting too
Emotional.
Thank you for acknowledging that and seeing that. That is such a big part of my life. I'm the oldest brother. I have two younger sisters. I'm the firstborn on both sides of my family, both generations of my family. And in Asian cultures, particularly Indian, Fijian cultures, being the firstborn son means something. There's a generational expectation, there's an experience, all of that. And I think I knew from the moment I stepped foot on this planet, and everybody else was like, he's going to be a little bit special. And with my sisters, I saw a way to connect with them, not in the traditional Indian brother type of way where you're looking after them and you're protecting them and you're doing that, because I don't need to protect them from anything. They're self-sufficient on their own. And so for me, my relationship with them grew in that space of us three have grown through a lot of trauma together. We are children of alcoholics, so we have a long history of addiction and that trauma that's bonded us, but we have been relentlessly living our own beat. And so when it's time for me to perform, they just know like it's my thing. It's my one little thing that I absolutely love to do. And so for them, when I started kind of diving into especially the Bay Area drag scene, and you know, you gotta pull looks, and my own looks were getting tired, and so I jumped into their closets and I was like, I need whatever you have. And they're like, yes, let's pull everything out. And my mom did too. And bangles and jewelry and saris and dupattas and all these beautiful things. And growing up, I would always watch my mom and my sisters and my aunts and my grandmas and everybody get ready. And putting on a sari is such a beautiful, intricate process, and you're pleating the fabric. And when I was little, I got to like hold the fabric of my mom while she pleated it. And I was like revered. Oh, that was such a juicy feeling, like that I was special enough. And I would always see like my aunt pin the scarves beautifully. And pinning is truly the magic that holds Indian outfits together, especially when you're seeing these like high energy dance sequences and this gorgeous like 50-pound sari. It's safety pins and a prayer. That's what it's held on. And so Sonia, especially in the video, is really kind of just the best person to roll with me. She's been coming to me with all my gigs. She's always like hanging out backstage or helping me with my makeup or giving me a lot of the makeup. A lot of the makeup that I still wear is from her. Like, here, you can have this. And so she'll often pin me into my looks or come with me and just be that. And for me, somebody who, I think truthfully, I don't identify really as anything. I think gender is such a limiting makeup palette. There's only two options. Boring. I know that what I represent is a male-identified individual. To be pinned by my sister in a traditional cultural action that usually is flipped means something. That's the performance of culture in a way to really push ourselves to think broadly. All those little young, beautiful people that are out there just dreaming to be pinned into their sari, or twirling around at home in whatever garment they feel, that moment was for everybody. Because Sonia is often like, okay, are you good, girl? Let's go. Come on, you got to get to the stage. And so that was a special moment because it represents unconditional love. She never said, I'm gonna love you differently because you prance around with fishnets in my scarves and all of that. I love you more for that. And so I think the message there is allow people to be who they are and celebrate them, pin them into whatever they feel like. And it's just such a special, sweet moment. We culturally, we put a lot of emphasis into things like weddings and graduations and these events to solidify our crossing of the threshold in so many different ways. And I'm not going to have this traditional wedding where I'm going to have these ceremonies that affirm my familial path. That happens every day for me. Those little ceremonies, those little prayers, those little invocations of culture and love and commitment happen every single moment. And so that was a lovely moment. And I'm so grateful for Sonia and Sophia, my sister, you see briefly, and all the animals that make some appearances in there too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a moment that a lot of people don't think about, and it's just so sweet and precious. And I hope, if you haven't seen SACH, please watch it, because that moment will hopefully give you a little bit of joy and gratitude. The other thing, across all of our shorts in this block, we called it Truth and Realness because one, it's a cute title, but two, every short, and in particular the 3 shorts that we can showcase tonight, deal with acceptance in different ways, finding personal truth, and perhaps maybe revealing it in a lot of different ways. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what that process was like as you were building these stories, about kind of the build up to this moment of acceptance. So Amber, in your film, the acceptance is kind of it's subtle and it's underneath and underlies kind of the final kind of climax at the end of the film. If you can talk a little bit more about how overt you were originally thinking the resolution was going to be, and then how you kind of more incorporated into what is real life, which is really complicated and can have family and death involved as well.
Totally. I would say I think my film is very Korean in that sense. So I made this film in film school, and it was really interesting because my Asian classmates were very like, I get it. All my non-Asian classmates were like, this doesn't make any sense. Why doesn't she say anything? Why isn't she more overt? Why doesn't she make like a huge scene? And I think there's some like cultural differences there. In terms of my own personal, I guess, journey. Yeah, even making this film was really hard, even though the film itself is subtle, because to me, the message was so personal and felt very direct and revealing. It was hard to make in that sense, and like learn how to kind of put myself out there, because I think those make the best films, right? The ones that are really personal and that you just have to be vulnerable with.
Yeah. And Niki, I think there are kind of these different layers of acceptance within your film as the conversation kind of goes through. As you were writing this with Karen, were you thinking about the differences between these, or what was the process in like building what goes after or what builds on top of as these revelations are happening?
Yeah, I think it was kind of interesting to come from like a very the conversation happens in like a very safe space, right? Like there's something casual about like sitting in the car with your friend and just like, leaving the windows down and having a chat, which we really kind of like wanted to focus on. It was just how okay it was for us to share those. Cause I think, there's a hyper focus on coming out stories in terms of like queer characters in film and television, but really like coming out is a process that happens like every day. It's like a thing that you do every day, especially, when you're young and when you don't know what to call it and when you don't see people like you, like it's a thing that they're tiny moments that they just build and build and build and build. And so those were kind of the moments that we wanted to highlight, like the formative moments where you step back and you're like, oh, when I was in it, I didn't I didn't realize that these were the things that I was feeling. But now that I recognized it and now I know what to call it, now, you know, I was just trying to be okay every day. Like I was kissing boys because that's what girls my age did, even though I felt nothing when I did it. So, you know, it's a process every day. And so we really wanted to show kind of that myriad of experiences, because we are so, as a community, like we are so vast and we are so diverse. Even within like the queer Asian American community, our experiences cover so much ground. And I think, you know, we kind of touched on a lot of little ones, and our hope was that, you know, it would kind of spur on more conversations for people to share what those experiences were like for them. Because even, I mean, listening to SNJV talk, like I could do it all day, because I love listening to those experiences and those moments for you. And I like would watch so many films about like queer people experiencing those moments, because they aren't singular, and they aren't, you know, what straight people in media decide to tell us.
Definitely. And I think that's the strength of being able to program this block and program these shorts, is that they're all really, really different, but they're not any less queer and any less Asian American. Sanjeev, if you can talk a little bit about how, you know, I think the film is kind of bookended with you kind of talking about acceptance. What was your thought process in terms of when you were talking to the audience about your journey?
I think for me, the thought process behind was, how can I articulate how much gratitude I have for love and kindness, simply. As tough as it has been to walk through this life without my own label within me, but having to accept other people's labels, there's so many transgressions that I just wish people acted from a space of awareness and kindness. As much as I can kind of inventory, and I have through therapy and group work and things like that, my points of bullying and just really bad experiences, I always remember those people that were so kind, that said, hey, stop bothering him, like, stop, or be kind. Like those tiny respite, those people who were oases in the desert was just so real to me, and they were my drink of water. So when it came time to really thinking about this film, I really wanted to just express my gratitude, let it radiate out. I'm so lucky to be able to get these opportunities to get on stage, or now in virtual stages and screens and such, to share what I love to do. But it's those people that were kind enough throughout the way to say, hey, Sanjeev, we see you. We know you're bringing something different. You're not doing the traditional drag race, yes, God, queen, drag. You're bringing something that's very, very different. And we're going to give you a spot. That's kindness. That's love. That's acceptance. And so for me, it was really about just sharing with the audience, if you do something that you are absolutely in love with, it's going to be lonely, but you're going to have the best relationship with yourself. And then those people that will help you along the way will just kind of magically appear. It may be tougher. We do hold identities that are in direct resistance to structures of power that we're not white, we'll be honest there, and it's not built for us. So we do have to muscle through sometimes. And with amazing filmmakers here and just in this entire festival, there are people that are doing the work to help create new roads for them to see themselves. So SACH is really kind of like finding your own truth, and then me sharing my truth of like all those people that were kind to me, all those, my sisters, the people that say thank you after a performance, like, they all mean something, and I don't ever take it for granted. I don't ever want to be that big pop star that's just this, like, I can't talk to anybody. I want to be breathlessly grateful. I want to give back to the world what it deserves, and that's true love and acceptance, because we don't have enough of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I kind of want to open it up kind of to just a larger conversation about, you know, a lot has happened in the past, you know, 2-3 years, and in particular within the queer media space and within the kind of Asian American media space. I wanted to kind of ask about, you know, Niki, you kind of brought it up briefly, that we're often seen as a monolith, and whether we're Asian American or queer, is there anything that you've seen recently that you think is kind of the turn, that corner turn, right? That will hopefully get us to the place where films like these are going to be available and be able to show kind of the true spectrum of both of these, you know, complicated identities.
What a question. I don't know if I can kind of point to a singular film, but I think that's part of the conversation, right? Like there's no one film that's going to be the gateway to everything that we need to say and everything that we as a community need to see. I feel like I'm constantly struggling in the space of like too gay for the Asian community and too Asian for the gay community. Like that's a thing that I'm constantly navigating, and like there are a lot of people who are slowly kind of like cracking that open and pushing it through, but it's tough because I love like queer female films, but a lot of them are very, very white, and like some of them are better than others. But you know, and then I think there's been a bit of there are a lot of Asian American films that I think people are really interested in the past couple of years, but a lot of them, you know, center some straight males. And like, while those are films that need to be made, those are stories that need to be told. But I think what's important is like, as those doors open, like I hope more doors behind that open up. Cause you know, like that whole industry rumor about, you know, all those Asian American projects that were waiting to be greenlit contingent on the success of Crazy Rich Asians. Yep. Like I wish Crazy Rich Asians could have been really bad. It wasn't, but like I wish it could have been really bad, and then all those other projects still would have happened. Like I think that's when we get the right to be mediocre. Not that we are, we're going to be, but the fact that, you know, those are opportunities afforded to people who are not from minority communities. They get to make mediocre films all the time. And there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure on us that, like, you know, if I make a queer Asian American film, like it has to check off every queer Asian American experience for the people who need these films, because we're always functioning from a place of scarcity. So, you know, I don't think it's the one film that's going to kind of open everything. It's the small moments. It's the community. It's like sharing resources. It's sharing experiences. It's mentorship. Like I am where I am because of incredibly kind and resourceful mentors who like show up with time, resources, and money, like to help me to get to where I'm going. And like, we need to be those people for the next wave of people coming up. So it's a lot, and it's a long game, but we're here, and we're trying, and we're learning, and we're loving, and we're appreciating, like Sanji said.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I totally agree. And it's so funny. I think it's the Asian part of us that's like, oh, there's going to be one solution, right? There's going to be one person. There's going to be like, it's going to be me or it's going to be them. And it's so great to hear that, like, you know, the mindset is changing, that this is a long game, and that this is a game of, again, of community and of like mutual aid, and of being grateful for when somebody gives you a heads up or gives you, you know, $5 or whatever it is. Amber, for you, and your kind of where you're going, where do you see kind of like the most potential, I guess, like, or opportunity?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
In terms of like what the trends are, you know, hopefully, you know, everybody uses Crazy Rich Asians, which but in terms of, the past couple of years have been, I guess, more, not as much as we would like, but more in terms of Asian American representation, but also Asian Americans behind the camera and really moving storytelling across the board forward.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it seems like, you know, like Parasite last year, right? Like, or was it this year? I have no sense of time.
Oh man,
that was monumental, right? That was huge. Like nobody, at least in my like circle of Asian filmmakers or Korean filmmakers or Korean friends, we did not anticipate that. And as you know, Niki was saying, I do think there is like a long road to go, and it's definitely like there needs to be more doors open. But that still just felt. I just remember that night I was actually writing a script by myself. Of course, such a lonely life, like being a filmmaker. writing, and like people were like, "Are you gonna watch the Oscars?" I was like, "No, I never watch it because usually to me it doesn't really resonate because the types of films I represented, I am not really that interested in." And so I was just like writing, and then my phone was like blowing up. Like, you have to watch at least his like speeches, and just to like see like someone speak like my mother tongue, like this language that like when I was younger, like I was ridiculed for, like made fun of for. Like I didn't even speak for a long time because I was confused as to if I should speak English or Korean. And to see him like speak Korean on that stage, I just remember like crying like alone in my room because it meant something to me. And so that felt like a door was opening, right? It's not, there needs to be more doors open, but that did mean something.
Yeah, Sanjeev, anything to add about the hopefully the long game?
Yeah, I mean, it's so beautifully said by Niki and Amber. I think that it is a long game. It is a process of, I think about the dishes that we so culturally make and cook. It takes a lot of seasonings and steps and mise en place, and it's not just a chicken breast with nothing on it, no seasoning. We season our art, our food, our people, our culture, everything. And I think about the journey of our people into different parts of the world. It wasn't just one person. It's families that moved together. I think about, one person got here, like the way I came to America was, or the way my family came to America was one uncle came and then worked and brought the other ones and their siblings and their kids. And so it's this mass movement of celebrating every small step. And truthfully, getting accepted into this film festival for me was exciting because as a filmmaker, when you shoot the film, it's one thing, and you're there, and then you start shopping it, and then you have to like, hey somebody, and I received a bazillion no's. Yes. And getting this was exciting, and I was kind of knee deep in another project, in my next project, and I just was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, great. And then everybody's like, oh my God, this is huge. Oh my God, the community around me. And it didn't really resonate fully. I was like, okay, great, thank you. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I am a Indian, Fijian, Punjabi, Bay Area kid, drag artist who is gender whatever, all of this. And that story is being told on a bigger platform. This is huge. This is, for me, internally, a Crazy Rich Asians moment where that means there's going to be other beautifully queer or whatever people getting to tell their stories. So it's those small steps. And I also think for many years I lived in Los Angeles, did the Hollywood thing, audition after audition, tech guy, terrorist, nerdy student, extra, whatever. Booked nothing, by the way, but would just be at casting directors just begging or lined up outside of studios for hours to be paid $40 to sit in an audience, I just hustled, and it was so hard, and I kept thinking, this can't be what we're fighting for. So for me, where I see a revolution happening is us creating our own. Do we need the validation of big major Hollywood studios? I love a check. I love resources, absolute. Greenlight my film, and I will create a big budget blockbuster, but it's going to be ethnic, it's going to be seasoned, it's going to be not for general white audiences. It's going to be for those kids who are like, oh my gosh, I don't speak my own, I whitewash my own name because I don't want to use my accent. I don't want to bring ethnic food to lunch because they're going to make fun of me. I want to make entertainment and education for those people. So, whether we're working in concert with Hollywood or other spaces, or we're creating our own, I'm very empowered right now to say, we don't need Hollywood like that. We have our own style, our own grace with which we can really harvest the fruits of our own stories in a way that we can nourish each other, nourish our own community, nourish each other at home, and then we can start opening up our home, right? And so I think we come from cultures where no matter how little we've had, you always think about how can we offer something else. It's like, come and eat, come and drink some, take your shoes off, get comfortable. We don't have much, but we can give you water and roti or whatever it might be. And so that's my path, is to help give roti to every single person, every creator along the way, to be like, I made it a little bit farther. Come, let's go. We're all doing this. So we have a lot of beautiful, but I want to encourage everybody to keep creating. Like, don't stop. Don't like wash it down. stop diluting, you know, and the way you both tell your, Niki and Amber tell your stories so authentically. Like that's so, I resonate so much with your classmates saying, I don't get that. I don't get what that means. And maybe it's not for you, honey. It's not, you know, and so I think when you look at SACH, there's a lot of little Easter eggs I hid in there in terms of outfits and soft background music. And that background music is in Hindi or Punjabi, but it tells a narrative that I couldn't say on screen. You know, there's a lot of talk about gossip and talking about one another versus and breaking each other down versus building each other up. And so I think we're in that space. We have to just love each other and keep creating.
Yeah, I mean, I think what everybody has said has been so lovely to hear, because I think it can sometimes feel counter to what we may grow up with, which is that it's sometimes it's a zero-sum game, right? There can only be one winner, and I think this panel has shown more than anything that that's not a mindset that everybody has, and hopefully it's the mindset that we can shift away from and move towards, again, away from scarcity and more towards gratitude and sharing. That is so amazing and hopeful. We're gonna have to wrap up soon, but I want to just thank you guys so much and ask about what you guys are gonna be working on next. So Amber, what are you working on, and what can we look out for?
So right now I'm actually finishing up my last short film that I shot in Uganda. It's about a neuroscientist who goes to Uganda to conduct memory experiments, and she comes across a story of lost love. And so for me, like, this film again is about just like, usually when we think, due to like my studies in undergrad, I've been traveling to Uganda for the past 10 years. And usually when I say that, the first kind of reaction is like, oh, war, violence, poverty, like other. And so for this film, I really want to show intimacy and love and like something that, you know, we can connect to. So yeah, hopefully our plan is to be done by November and have, you know, start doing this whole festival thing again. It's like a never-ending game, and I think that's why honestly, I think that's why community is so important in filmmaking too, is that it is so grueling and it's just like a marathon, and you need people around you to be like, you're okay, you can do this, you know, like just keep going. So that's next, and then hopefully I'm working on a feature, so we'll see how that goes. But again, it's a long game, right? Who knows when we can actually ever make a feature, but.
Yeah. Niki, what are you working on next?
Yeah, so the film's playing at lots of festivals this month. So if you can't catch it here, we're in Atlanta and Toronto and Seattle and New Mexico and Dublin this month as well. So lots of opportunities to see the film. We're actively developing it into a series format, because the format of the animation and live action, there's been some opportunity, doors opening up for us to kind of continue to tell more stories, which we're very, very excited about. I'm also developing a feature, so Amber, I'm right there with you. Yeah, right. We're doing it with my producer Andrew on. So he's helping produce a feature that I wrote that I had the support from CAPE, the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment, a wonderful program. So working on that, and yeah, connecting. I'm loving meeting everybody. So thank you for this. Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. SNJV, what's next?
Well, just to be in the presence of, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see what Amber and Niki bring. But for me, I've been working on a little film for GAPA, which is the Gay Asian Pacific Alliance. It's a Bay Area-based organization, community organization that started in the 80s out of a living room to support the intersection between LGBTQ+ and the API community in the Bay Area, but has grown worldwide. And every year they host a show called Runway, which is their annual pageant show. And for over 30 years, they've been crowning a Mr. and Miss GAPA, going away with gender in the future. And these are 30 years of API LGBTQ+ royals that have impacted the community so greatly. So for Runway 2020 this year, well, actually I should track back. Last year I earned the title of Mr. GAPA 2019, which was really exciting. I'm not a pageant person, I'm not a competitive person, thank you very much. It felt great, but I'm the first South Asian winner in the history of that. So for my reign, I really wanted to share our stories and share our history, our ancestry. So we've made a film documenting the history of just these beautiful API like royalty throughout like San Francisco, the Bay Area, the world. We're premiering it on November 21st, 2020 online. And we had our shoot last week, which was very safe, but very challenging in times such as the unprecedented times, as they call it. So I'm excited. Yeah, it's called Rise of the Immortals, because once you become a Gap Up runway pageant winner, you become an immortal. So these deities will be coming down to earth to bless us with their boba pearls of wisdom on November 21st, 2020. So I'm really excited about that. And more to come. Lots more performance opportunities. And, you know, I dream big. And sometimes dreaming big means doing it all by yourself. And so I'm excited to partner. And there's just been already so many great connections from this platform that I'm like, oh my gosh, dreams are happening. So
Yeah, no, I mean, all of that sounds so exciting, and please do keep us in the loop. You know, we were talking before in our little pre-call, like I always view the festival as hopefully the first step, first contact. We really do want to make sure that we're helpful throughout however long people want their careers to be, especially because we all know that really the second thing is the hardest, right? The first thing is great and you're full of excitement. And then the second and third thing, you're like, oh gosh, it's now you have to like really, I guess, like, prove that it's not beginner's luck or whatever people are going to say at you. So thank you guys so much. I want to thank again to our community partners who all do work within this queer arts and API space. So Light Leaks, Queer Asian Social Club, Q-Wave, Gap Mini, P-Flag, Rainbow Parents. Thank you guys so much for trusting us as a festival to show off these films and for continuing to do the work for queer API people across the US and the world. You can catch all of the shorts, the 3 shorts that we showcased here today, as well as a couple more in our Truth and Realness Queer Shorts block, which you can watch at AIF.org through October 11th. And we just want to thank our filmmakers again. Thank you so much, and hope everybody has a great night, and see you for day 4 of AIF tomorrow. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
thank you.
Ooh.